Hey people, hope you guys doing great. In today's video we will see, what if Naruto Reborn as half angel and half demon, part 2. Huge shout out to Da-Deranged-Dude for this story. If you end up liking this video please consider subscribe, and like the video, so let's start the story. It was dark. The large cavern-like room was engulfed in an unnatural darkness, save for a small area in the middle of the room. In said area was a desk with more papers and scrolls on top than the Hokage's desk. And seated at the desk was a man wearing a wide black robe with blood-red clouds on it. The man had dark orange hair and ghostly pale skin. On his face was several piercings going down the length of his nose. His irises were a light sky blue with several gray rings in the surrounding whites. He was Pain, the composer of a complex plan to burn the present world and bring about a new age, a new dawn in the land of shinobi. He was the leader of the Akatsuki, the Red Dawn. However, his normally stoic expression bore one of extreme frustration. There was a knock on a seemingly non-existent door. A part of the wall opened revealing his best and only friend Conan. The blue-haired lady bowed. Pain-sama, there is urgent news. I am very busy, Conan. Pain said as his peculiar eyes scanned through a large scroll. It better be important enough to interrupt my research on how to re-manifest the QB. With Uzumaki dead, our plans are set back until I find an appropriate way to revive his tenant. Actually, Pain-sama, it relates directly to the Uzumaki boy. Conan replied, a slightly smug smirk on her pretty visage. The Akatsuki leader looked up from his intense research, staring at his partner inquisitively. How? Itachi and Kisame walked down a familiar road that led to the village of Konoha. It was the very same path they had taken in order to try and find one Uzumaki Naruto 3 years before. Now they were heading back to find him yet again, in order to see if the rumor that he came back from the dead was true. So what do you think, Itachi? The blue-skinned Kirinuknin asked. Do you believe the brat is actually alive? Itachi let out the signature Uchiha grunt. I have my doubts, but this isn't the first time Naruto-kun has surprised me before. Kisame smirked mockingly, baring his shark-like teeth. Reminiscing of your childhood in Konoha, eh? The Uchiha glared at him, his 3-tomo Sharingan spinning. Unfortunately for him, Kisame was way too used to such stares and was not affected at all. Itachi turned his eyes back down the road, the top of Konoha's infamous walls breaking the top of the Shroud of Leaves. People were hustling up and down the streets of Konoha, everyone looking very excited while carrying various supplies. Tomorrow was October 10th, the day of the QB festival. Tomorrow, they will celebrate the sacrifice of the Yondaime Hokage and the end of the terrible calamity that was the QB no Kitsune. Several also planned to party for the dreaded QB's human reincarnation, Uzumaki Naruto, had died 3 years prior. A certain ramen girl watched from behind the flaps of the Ichiraku ramen stand, listening to the bustle of her fellow civilians. However, unlike them, she had a very sad look. Her mind was off in its own little world, recalling the past. Almost all of the memories that were brought up in her brain contained a certain energetic blonde that she thought of as the little brother she never had. Naruto. I am thought. What do I need to do in order to have you inhaling ramen in front of me again? Just then, a young man, a little younger than her but quite taller, entered the shop. She looked up at him with a polite smile. Welcome to Ichiraku's, may I take your order? She asked nicely. The man smiled back. Is it okay if I looked at the menu first? I haven't had any ramen here for a while. Of course, sir. I nodded. She took a menu from a small compartment underneath the serving counter and gave it to him. The man thanked her before he sat down on a stool and began to read the selection. Now that she had her head fully out of the metaphorical cloud of her thoughts, the ramen girl observed her customers' looks more closely. The first thing she noticed was the Konoha insignia on a cloth wrapped around his neck. So this guy was a shinobi? Then she examined his face. He had tan skin, cerulean blue eyes and a mop of sunny blonde hair adorned on his head. He wore 2 earrings, one having a clear gem and the other a black one. Slightly buried in his unruly hair was a pair of black goggles. The lower part of his face was covered by the menu he was reading so closely. Then took in his outfit. The man had a white trench coat, black standard shinobi pants and black battle gloves. He looked so strikingly familiar to Naruto it was painful. Of course, as any person would assume, she almost immediately concluded that this man was Naruto. But Naruto was dead, so the ramen girl pushed the thought away with vigor. Ayam shook her head and smiled politely again. Are you ready to order, sir? The man looked up at her with his cerulean eyes, the menu never leaving the bottom half of his face. If I may ask, where is the old man who usually runs this stand? He's off in Demon Country in order to compete in the ramen competitions. The ramen girl answered. I'm substituting as head chef while he's gone. The man nodded in understanding and finally let the menu down on the counter. Well, you look a bit underhanded here. I'm not going on any missions for a while, so do you mind if I come here and work part-time for a few weeks? Ayam's eyes were wider than an akamichi. The blond man's cheeks each held 3 whisker-like marks. Bam! The ramen girl's bangs shadowed her eyes as she looked down at the fist she slammed on the counter. The man looked startled. Ayam was clearly shaking. You! She hissed, venom in her voice. She looked up at him, revealing teary eyes filled with anger. Get out of my stand! The man opened his mouth, but she interrupted him before he could say anything. I said get the freak out. The blond man looked deeply hurt before he stood and left the stand without uttering a single word. Ayam put up sign on the counter that said out for lunch when it was still early morning and went to the back of the small stand. If anyone had entered through the flaps, they would have heard a quiet weeping. A/N. This next part is a bit graphic. Why would someone do that? Why would someone impersonate Naruto? Is he trying to mess with my feelings? What if it is Naruto? That's impossible, he's dead. Naruto. Ayam woke up, her cheeks wet. She was in a fetal position in a corner of the stand's kitchen. She wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand as she stood up, feeling sore from the unorthodox sleeping position. The ramen girl looked outside a small window and saw that it was already nighttime. She looked at a clock on a nearby counter and cursed at the time being read. It was almost midnight. Did she really just cry herself into a small coma? Ayam sighed. She turned off the lights in the stand and gathered her things. She closed the metal grating that separated the serving area from the stools over the counter and locked the doors. Soon enough, the girl was walking down the dark, empty streets towards her house. Suddenly she heard footsteps behind her. Ayam startled and immediately took out a kunai from her purse. She may not know how to use it properly, but at least it was something. She turned to find no one at all. That incident this morning is messing with my head, Ayam thought, shaking her head. She continued on her way, not bothering to store away the kunai. Then a few moments later, the footsteps returned. This time, she turned quicker and caught the perpetrator. It was a large, burly man that looked more monster than human in the dim streetlights. He gave a sick, disgusting chuckle. Well, it seems you caught me, he said in a deep, guttural voice. Ayam tightened her grip on her kunai. The man looked up and down her figure appreciatively. It disgusted her. You sure you can use that thing, miss? Stay away from me. The ramen girl stuttered, inching backwards. She had to put as much space as possible between her and this man. Suddenly her back collided with something. A scrawny hand shot out from and grabbed the wrist holding her kunai. The unknown person twisted it, making her cry in pain. The kunai was released and fell to the ground. The hand then pulled her hand up, making her turn to look at its owner. It was another man, tall and skinny. He licked his lips, sending shivers down Ayam's spine. She's really soft, Onizen. Can I get first dibs tonight? No way, Otuto. The big one snapped. We rarely get any good-looking ones 'cause all of them are kunoichi. This one is mine. The skinny man scowled. Fine. But I get to be first on the next hot girl we catch. Ayam struggled as hard as she could, but the younger one's grip was like iron. The big burly man approached her with a sick smile on his face. She looked at them, pleading them to stop. Tears fell from her eyes as the two unzipped their pants and dragged her to a nearby alley. Several muffled shouts soon came from the alley, accompanying grunts and the sound of ripping cloth. Suddenly a bright light flashed. The brown-haired ramen girl opened her eyes. She found herself on a comfortable bed looking up at a familiar ceiling. She was in her apartment. Ayam's eyes widened as the memories from last night resurfaced. She sat up, feeling her body for anything that was irregular. Oddly enough, she felt fine, aside from a small bruise on her wrist. All of her clothes were also still intact. What happened? There was a smell of cooking ramen from her apartment's kitchen. She cautiously stood up and approached the door that led to her bedroom. She opened the door a crack and peeked through. Her eyes widened as she caught a glimpse of who was cooking. Flashback. Ayam couldn't see anything because of all the tears falling from her eyes. All she saw were big blurs in the darkness of the night combined with the alleys. She heard the two men laugh perversely as they slid out of something. She couldn't tell. Suddenly there was a shout of pain and the sick crack of bone as one of the two blurs flew backwards. Another blur took his place and struck the remaining one. The man grunted as he slammed into the alley wall. "Why you?" one of the two men's voices roared. Another shout of pain, another grunt, a rip of cloth. The ramen girl was blinded by a sudden flash of light. Teparay! Another cry of pain, the smell of burnt flesh. Be bastard! Another crack of bone, the thuds of fist pounding against flesh. Kagi Bunshin no Jutsu. The sound of weak whimpering, many new blurs joined the first. That'll teach you to try and harm Ayam-chan. The familiar nickname that only two people in the world used, her father and Naruto. The ramen girl fell unconscious, the stress of the situation overcoming her. Flashback end. The blonde man from yesterday whistled as he strained the ramen noodles before putting them in the broth. He took the two bowls he made and put them on Ayam's table. He looked at the door with a look that said, "I know you're there." Ayam opened the door slowly, still suspicious of the person in front of her. The man motioned for her to sit down. He took his own seat and ate into his own ramen. He finished in 4 seconds flat. Ayam sat down with him, staring at the content look he had on his face. The man spotted her stare and immediately rubbed his face with the back of his battle gloves. She didn't stop her staring. "Is there something on my face?" "On your cheeks." "My cheeks?" The man took off his glove and felt his cheeks. He shrugged when he didn't feel anything. "It's still there." "I can't feel anything." He was starting to get annoyed. Ayam reached over and traced his whisker marks. The man's eyes softened. "Oh, that's what you meant. Who are you?" He smiled. "You know who I am, Ayam-chan." "Liar. I do not know you. The person you're trying to impersonate is dead. Nice try, though." The smile disappeared. "Ayam-chan." "Don't Ayam-chan me. What is it do you want? What can you accomplish by acting like Uzumaki Naruto?" The ramen girl looked at him expectantly. "Do you want a job? Free ramen? A date? What is it?" The man looked pensive. A date would be nice, but that's not it." Ayam forcefully repressed a blush and narrowed her eyes. "What is it that you want?" "I want Ayam-chan to believe that I really am Naruto." The man looked at her with such intensity, a chill did lapse up and down her back. She sighed. Then the ramen girl looked at him with a smug smile. "I'll believe you're Naruto if you can accomplish what only he can." "And what is that exactly?" The sound and smell of ramen cooking followed. Naruto picked at his teeth with a toothpick. In front of him were nearly 50 empty bowls. Next to him stood a gaping Ayam. "No way. How? There's no way he could be alive." The ramen girl looked at him with curiosity. The blonde shinobi grinned his foxy grin. "Shit. Only Naruto could grin like that." How? "Well." The blonde smirked and began to tell her the very same story he told everyone else. Kisame looked at the two bloody heaps that lay in the middle of the alley with disdain. "Wow," the shark man said. "Whoever did this must have been really angry." Itachi looked out of the alley, where several people were dressed up for the QB festival tonight. None of them noticed the two Akatsuki members nor the two most likely dead thugs. They were all too caught up talking about how every trace of the demon was gone from their beloved village. Even the so-called highly trained and alert shinobi. Itachi shook his head in embarrassment. I think I remember why I left Konoha now. Kisame laughed. Sasuke stopped his training with Suigetsu and Jugo. He suddenly looked up into the sky as a foreboding feeling came upon his Uchiha senses. His Manjiki Sharingan swirled into being as he bared his teeth. Naruto. Suigetsu and Jugo looked at each other in confusion as Sasuke continued to glare at the sky like it had slept with his mother. Karen just watched, squealing at Sasuke's sexiness. Damned fangirls. Two men walked through the sandy dunes of Kaze no Kuni, a deathly silence between them. One was tall and slim, while the other was hunched over and bulky. They both wore wide-brimmed straw hats that covered their faces and black robes with crimson clouds on them. So who's our target again, yeah? The tall one asked. Gaara no Sabaku, the Jinchuriki of the Ichibi no Shikaku. The hunched one responded in a guttural voice. Sounds like a worthy opponent. You say he's the Kazekage too, yeah? Yes, but my spy assures me that we will have an opening to capture him and bring him back to the base safely. It doesn't matter, yeah? I'll blow up anyone standing in our way. The hunched one sighed. You still don't understand true art. PSH. You're the one who doesn't understand, yeah? True art is a magnificent instant of glory, beauty, and passion. It comes and goes in the blink of an eye. You are incorrect as usual. True art is everlasting, able to live on for every future generation to love and admire. And so the two artists bickered. Naruto? Said Blonde turned from his bowl of ramen, noodles sticking out of his mouth. He looked quizzically at a certain pinkette standing next to the entrance of the Ichiraku ramen stand. SSSHKRRPHRCHMMNN? I am whacked his head with a ladle. Swallow your food before speaking, Naruto-kun. Naruto pouted, gulping down his mouthful of noodle and broth. Sakura shook her head in exasperation as she sat down with her teammate. Geez, even after 3 years of being dead, you haven't changed one bit, she said. Hey, he retorted. I've changed a lot, Databeo. Whatever, Naruto. Sakura rolled her eyes. I am giggled. Then she glared at the blonde. Naruto-kun, have you forgotten about our deal? Naruto ignored her and continued to inhale his ramen. Naruto-kun. Slurp. Naruto-kun. Slurp. Don't make me tell Sakura about that time Toos-san taught you about the birds and bees. PFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFF I am smirked. Try me. The blonde sighed. Fine. He jumped over the counter to the other side and ducked out from Sakura's view. A second later, he stood up, wearing an apron over his mesh undershirt. Apprentice ramen cooker, Uzumaki Naruto reporting for duty. Naruto snapped a salute with a ladle in hand. At ease, Private. I am giggled, getting into the act. The blonde let his hand fall. Now, man the pots and make sure the noodles don't overcook. I'll handle the broth since only an Ichiraku knows the legendary Ichiraku ramen broth recipe. Aye, ma'am. He saluted again before going over the noodle pots. Naruto's working here now? Sakura asked incredulously. Yep. I am responded. He told me he needed some extra money since he's been late on his apartment rentals and other taxes for about 3 years. Now what did you like? I'll have a diet miso. The pinkette responded. With the usual toppings. I am nodded before she poured some pre-prepared broth into a bowl and heading over to Naruto and telling him the toppings that Sakura would like. The ramen girl handed him the bowl before attending to another customer who had walked into the stand. Sakura waited for a minute as Naruto added the noodles to the broth and began to chop up various vegetables and meat, which were put into the bowl soon after. The blonde set the bowl down in front of Sakura. The pinkette took her chopsticks and snapped them in half perfectly. Itadakimasu. She closed her eyes as she tried to dip her chopsticks into her bowl, but instead poked something soft. She poked harder at the offending object, keeping her away from her meal. The pinkette opened her eyes to find the utensils stabbing Naruto in the cheek. That kind of hurts, Sakura-chan. The blonde was lying on the counter, his head hovering over her bowl. What the hell are you doing, Naruto? Well, Chan told me your preferred toppings were green onions, strips of sirloin, boiled egg, and a Naruto. You haven't changed. At all. A/N. A Naruto is a swirl-shaped cake made of ground fish and spices. It is traditionally used in Japan as a ramen topping. Sakura let out a sigh of content as she finished her Naruto-less bowl. Thanks for the meal. You're welcome, Sakura-san. Responded as she stirred a pot of broth. Come back anytime. I will, the pinkette said. Right now I need to go train with Tsunade-sensei. Hey Sakura-chan, I want to ask you something before you go. Naruto smiled as he leaned on the serving counter. Ask away, Naruto. Sakura smiled back. You wanna, The blonde blushed as he scratched the back of his head. You wanna go on a date tonight? Sakura's eyebrows went up. A date? Yeah. A walk through the Central Park, he explained. Unlike the times before Sasuke's betrayal, the apprentice medic Nin actually thought about the offer. She felt somewhat indebted to giving her teammate the date he always wanted. It's the least I can do for someone who died for my selfish wants, Sakura thought as her expression softened. Sure, Naruto. I'd love to. The blonde grinned, revealing shining white teeth that would make Guy jealous. Great. I'll pick you up at 6. Sakura stood before her mirror, clad in only her undergarments. She held a blouse in each hand and looked extremely pensive. The pinkette studied the two tops, trying to decide which one would look best on her. Sakura. A sweet blonde boy with a bouquet of flowers is waiting for you at the door. Her mother called from downstairs. Gah! The green-eyed girl panicked, and immediately threw on a shirt and got into her pants. Wait a second. Meanwhile, a similarly haired woman looked at a rigid, nervous Naruto standing at the doorway, a bundle of red roses in his hand. The woman had her hand on her chin, as if thinking of something. So you're Uzumaki Naruto, huh? Why, yes, ma'am. Naruto nodded, sweating profusely. He was nervous of his first ever real date. And with Sakura-chan too. The Haruno before him sighed before shaking her head. She smiled. Look, Naruto-san. My daughter has told me many good things about you and I expect you to be nice, alright? She explained. Inwardly, Naruto let out a sigh of relief. Wow. I thought she'd grill me about proper behavior towards Sakura-chan or something. Please stop making him nervous, Kachan, Sakura said as she descended the nearby stairs. The pinkette wore a simple green blouse the same color as her eyes and tight-fitting jeans. But as casual as the outfit was, it managed to bring a small blush to the half-angel/demon's cheeks. The medic Nin grabbed her teammate's hand, eliciting an even bigger blush. Let's go, Naruto. With a nod and another blush, the blonde opened the door and led her out into the dusky evening. The older of the two women watched them as they walked towards the central Konoha Park. She frowned. Something tells me this date isn't going to end well. Where's Naruto-chan again? Ran asked as she dug around Naruto's apartment. He said he was on a date with Sakura-chan. Haku replied, calmly reading a magazine on the couch. He's on what? Ran shouted abruptly. The two teens strolled down one of the park's pathways, watching other couples go by and kids play at the playgrounds. Sakura stared pointedly at her date. The blonde caught her look and began to search himself for something askew. Finally, he returned the look. What is it? The pink-haired girl sighed. Well, I don't know. This is supposedly the date you've always wanted since we were 12, but you haven't even touched me since back at my house. Look, I'm just nervous. This is my first date. Naruto grumbled. You mean even with all those cute angel and demon girls, you haven't landed yourself a single date? Sakura gasped. Wow. That's a bit pathetic. I'm not exactly the womanizing type like Ero-senin, the blonde replied. Besides, most of the time I've been training and hanging out with Abana-chan, Ran-chan, and Haku-chan. The pinkette rolled her eyes. Whatever. Naruto blushed as he suddenly wrapped his arm around her shoulders. Sakura stiffened at that. What are you doing? You wanted some contact, so here's some contact. Naruto answered in a smug voice. The pinkette pouted. Then she settled into it, leaning slightly on her teammate. Fine then. Naruto's face suddenly lightened up. I have an idea. There's this spot I want to show you. The pink-haired girl thought, putting a finger to her chin. All right. But first, buy me a popsicle. She pointed to a small ice cream cart. Naruto's sweat dropped. You haven't changed either, Sakura-chan. Wow. Sakura gaped at the sunset from on top of a hill in the middle of the park. She nibbled lightly on the popsicle Naruto had bought for her. Like it? The blonde asked, a foxy grin on his face. The two sat at the hill's peak, at the base of a large cherry blossom tree. Its flowers were beginning to form. Naruto smiled as he glanced up at the tree's canopy. The blossoms will bloom soon. It's almost springtime. The pinkette leaned against her teammate, enjoying the romantic moment. Yeah. Say, Naruto. HM? How do you know about this spot? I've been through this park on my way home from working at the hospital, but I've never seen this place. The blonde's eyes softened. I don't want to talk about it. The three otherworldly girls sat on Naruto's bed in a circle. Haku and Hibana explained the reason Naruto and Sakura were going out on a date. Ran scratched the back of her head sheepishly, a habit she picked up from the blonde. Oh. So he asked her out so he could tell her that. Yep. Hibana nodded. Naruto-kun wanted Sakura to know how he feels about her. Wow. Rand said. It takes a pretty big set of balls to confess this kind of thing on such a romantic of setting. If you need big balls, Naruto-kun's your man. Haku commented. She frowned. That didn't sound quite right. Ran and Hibana giggled. Then the navy blue-haired demoness smirked. Hey girls, wanna guess what I found in a floorboard under Naruto-chan's couch? She lifted a cardboard box from the floor onto the bed. What is it? Hibana asked, putting her textbook away. The way her cousin smirked sent chills up her heavenly spine. She opened the box. What's that? Haku gasped. Her cheeks turned pink as the contents of the box were revealed. How could Naruto-kun read such unhealthy magazines? Hibana blushed brightly as she covered her mouth. A large stack of adult reading materials sat in the box, their covers showing rather graphic images. Well, he'd have to get inspiration for the oiroke from somewhere. Ran nodded sagely. Let's get to reading. Naruto felt the pinkette take his hands. She guided his arms to wrap around her waist. You know, Naruto. I don't want this moment to end. Sakura commented as the sunset began to dim and nightfall arrived. Me neither. Naruto whispered. The blonde gulped. Sakura-chan, I have something very important to tell you. What is it, Naruto? Naruto thought carefully about his next words. Then he opened his mouth. This is something I've been thinking about for the past 2 years I was gone. Ever since we met, I've had feelings that attracted me to you. I was unsure, thinking it was just some childish crush. Well, while in Shinkai and Makai I've confirmed these feelings and want to make sure you know about them as well. I want you to accept them, but even if you don't they will not go away. A blush crawled up the pink-haired medic Nin's cheeks. What are you trying to say? Naruto tightened his hold around her waist. I love you, Sakura-chan. Shikamaru knocked hard on Naruto's apartment door, breathing heavily. He had just ran from the Hokage Tower in order to deliver a message. A female voice called from inside. Coming! The door opened to reveal a lavender-haired and eyed girl that seemed to glow in the dimming sunlight. From what Naruto told him and the rest of the Konoha 11, this girl was an angel. Yes? Is there something you want? Nara Shikamaru. The Chunin finished for her. Shikamaru-san. The angel girl nodded. Where is Naruto? He asked. He's out on a date with Sakura-san. The pineapple-haired brunette shoved away his curiosity about that. Where are they? Central Konoha Park. Domo. The Chunin said before turning on his radio. This is Shikamaru. I know where Naruto is. Niji's voice came from the other side of the two-way radio. Where is he? Central Konoha Park. Shikamaru repeated. Be sure to hurry. Hi. The line buzzed with static as Niji turned his own radio off. The shadow manipulator prepared to leap onto a nearby roof, but a voice stopped him. What's going on? Hibana asked. Akatsuki. The tactician simply replied as he jumped off in the direction of the park. Sakura couldn't breathe. She couldn't blink. She couldn't move. Hell, she couldn't even feel her heart beating. Did he just say what I thought he did? Cha! He just confessed. Shinaro! Inner Sakura raged, blushing wildly. The pinkette felt her teammate's hot breath on her neck. The moment, and what he had just said was driving her crazy. Sakura wanted to take the blonde right there, and have her way with him in that secluded spot in the park. But something told her to stop. I truly love you, Sakura-chan. Naruto closed his eyes. But, as a brother would to his closest sister. The pinkette's eyes widened. Okay, now I just know that he's messing with me on purpose. I've realized that you would never love me in the way you loved Sasuke. So I tried to love you in a way that you could love me as well. I thought it would be hard. But then I realized that it was almost disturbingly comfortable to think of you as a sibling. I realized that since the start, this affection I've had for you since we were kids was just merely sibling love, not the romantic kind. Naruto explained. I hope you understand, Sakura-chan. Tears threatened to fall from Sakura's eyes. She just couldn't help but feel somehow dejected. I understand, Naruto. But no matter how you love me, I will do anything I can to support it. I may not return it, but after all that I have done to you, I feel indebted to help you out. Thanks, Sakura-chan. Naruto whispered. He let go of her waist and stood up. Well, it feels good to finally have that off my chest. Yeah, Sakura said, smiling sadly. How touching, a new voice said. The two teens shot up, brandishing kunai. They searched for the source of that voice. Then a black silhouette rose from the ground and vanished, revealing two men. They wore black cloaks covered in red clouds. Good to see you again, Naruto-kun, Itachi said in monotone. Yo, brat. Kisame grinned toothily. Naruto and Sakura glared as they prepared to spring into action. No need for violence, Naruto-kun. Itachi's Sharingan spun. We just want some information, such as how you are alive. The blonde smirked. Like I tell you that. However, I will tell you that the QB's gone. He's not inside me anymore. So leave me and this village alone. I'm afraid we can't, brat. Kisame hefted his samahata onto his shoulder. Tell us what happened to the QB or else. Or else what? Sakura spat. We'll have to kidnap you and torture the information out of you, of course. Kisame laughed. Naruto grinned. Let's see you try. He took his goggles from his forehead and slipped them over his eyes. Suddenly his trench coat flew backwards. The blonde let his sleeves slide right off his arms as his coat drooped behind his back. However, it was still attached to his shoulder blades. The diamond earring on his right ear glowed brightly. Shikamaru, Lee and Niji ran across rooftops towards Konoha Central Park. There had been sightings of two Akatsuki members earlier in the day, and they were assigned to warn Naruto of their presence. As they hopped over streets, they spotted people heading to the plaza in front of the Hokage Tower for the QB festival. The three Konohanin ignored them and continued running. Suddenly, a crimson and navy blue blur landed next to them. It was Ran, Naruto's demonic friend. What are you doing here? Niji asked. If Naruto-chan dies again, we'd have gone through all that trouble training him back in Shinkai and Makai for nothing, Ran replied with a smirk. Shikamaru glanced at her, noticing the fact that she had no trouble keeping pace with the rest of the group. A shadow passed overhead. The three shinobi looked up to find a winged figure seemingly guarding them from harm. Hai-chan, you show off! Ran shouted at the figure. Hako huffed as she ran down the streets to get to Konoha Central Park. Why is not having chakra so damn frustrating? The girl growled in frustration. She stopped to catch a breath. What I wouldn't give for being able to jump on rooftops again. She continued to run in order to try and help. Hibana gasped as her blonde friend's Ryatsu flared. Naruto released his wings. Ran looked troubled before she sped up to the front of the group. "Let's hurry up," Ran told the three shinobi. Lee, Niji, and Shikamaru nodded before going even faster in order to keep in step with the demonic and angelic girls. Itachi and Kisame stepped back, slightly stunned at Naruto's transformation. The blonde's tan skin paled to a creamy color. His whiskers thinned so much they were barely visible. His cerulean eyes became a frosty, ice-cold blue. A golden ethereal ring floated above his head, wisps of silver mist floating down from it, forming a sort of mystic cloak around Naruto's body. However, the most noticeable part of the new Naruto was that instead of his white trench coat, a huge pair of pure white, golden-tipped wings flapping lightly behind him. "Well," Kisame muttered. "That was unexpected." Itachi grunted. Twin kodachis fell from the inside of his sleeves into his waiting nail-polished hands. "All right, Naruto-kun, if it is a fight you want, then Kisame and I would be happy to oblige." The fish-like man hefted his large sword and with a loud cry, smashed it into the ground, sending a large cloud of dust into the air. Sakura spit the remains of her popsicle onto the ground as she turned, back to back with her teammate, in order to search for the two Akatsuki members. The pinkhead's emerald eyes glanced at the wing back of the blonde. "Geez, Naruto. I knew you said you were now part angel, but wings. Well, what did you expect? A fish tail and gills?" the blonde replied. His frosty eyes scanned the cloud for any source of the two S-class nukenin. Suddenly a figure dropped in between the two, swinging a large sword in a circle. Naruto and Sakura ducked and rolled away from the figure, now revealing itself as Kisame. The shark man grinned toothily at the medic Nin. He leaped at her with Samahata swinging madly. The pinkette was forced to dodge backwards. "Sakura-chan!" the blonde shouted out as he lost vision of his teammate in the cloud. He growled. "This is no ordinary smoke." Naruto put his hands together to form the ram's seal. "Kai!" Slowly, the smoke dissipated, revealing the area atop the hill. There was no one there other than himself. "Damn it!" he cursed. Naruto searched the park woods below and all sides of the slope for any signs of the Akatsuki or Sakura. What happened to them? If I can't find them on the ground, then I'll have to look in the sky. His wings flapped, lifting him off the ground lightly. A sudden voice stopped him. Now, Naruto-kun. It's not polite to leave a fight. That's cowardly," Itachi said. He held his kodachis in reverse grip, standing at the base of the cherry blossom tree. The blonde allowed himself to fall back to the ground as he turned to the uchiha. "What happened to Sakura-chan and the shark man?" he demanded more than asked. The stoic nukenin slightly narrowed his eyes. "That is nothing you should worry about. I am your opponent." Naruto smirked. "Fine then. Come at me, team!" Itachi's three-tomo Sharingan swirled into being. "So be it." Sakura stood in the light woods of the park. Even though the trees and vegetation were less dense than in the forests surrounding the village, there was still a lot of cover for an enemy to attack from. She flexed her hands, slowly saturating them with her chakra. A blue-skinned figure appeared behind her, his sword swinging at her neck. Sakura quickly dropped to the ground and swept her left leg around to trip her opponent. Kisame hopped over the kick, with his own leg swinging at her head. With flexibility only Kunoichi could achieve, Sakura bent backwards. The only thing keeping her from lying flat on the ground was the toes on her right foot. Planting her palms on the ground and utilizing Tsunade's legendary strength, she used those toes to shoot her lower body upwards. Her left leg was then poised to deliver a strong kick to her opponent's crotch. Kisame used his spinning momentum to turn sideways, dodging the kick. He spun around, his sword extended to deliver a horizontal slash at the now upside-down medic Nin's legs. Sakura bent her legs forward, avoiding the strike and planting them on the ground at the same time. The pinkette continued her somersault, flipping yet again, to put some room between her and her opponent. Kisame grinned. "You're pretty good. But not nearly good enough." The blue-skinned man grabbed the bandages surrounding Samahata and ripped them off, revealing the spiny sword in all its glory. He let out a battle cry before charging at the pinkette. Sakura punched the ground, shattering the earth and sending a shockwave towards Kisame. The shark man jumped above the destruction her punch caused. He flew at her at near untraceable speed. Samehada was on his shoulder, prepared to be swung like a baseball bat. Sakura, not having enough time to dodge, quickly bent backwards. The sword flashed in her vision, just a few inches near her nose. The pinkette, still bent backwards, turned her torso so her hands could be planted on the ground. She then spun like a sideways top, her outstretched legs like the blades of a shuriken. A foot luckily caught Kisame in the cheek, sending him blasting through a tree. As she stopped spinning and steadied herself, Sakura mentally smiled. I'll have to thank Lee for teaching me the basics of Goken. The pinkette suddenly dropped to her knee, gasping. Her cranium ached, as if some sort of invisible tube had sucked her blood from her forehead. What the hell was that? She coughed. Kisame's laugh echoed through the trees. The blue-skinned man reappeared in front of her, his cheeks slightly bruised. Geez, if I hadn't softened that blow with chakra, you would have kicked my head straight off. Kisame chuckled. So, do you feel it? Feel what? The pinkette asked as she staggered backwards. Samehada's special ability. It devours all nearby sources of chakra. Even if it doesn't touch you at all, Samehada will siphon your chakra until you have none left. Kisame explained. And against opponents with low chakra reserves, such as Medicnine, it's especially deadly. The sound of metal clanging came from the top of the hill nearby. Naruto, I hope you're okay, Sakura worriedly thought. Cha! We aren't doing so well either, Inner Sakura retorted. Naruto was willing to admit it. Itachi was fast. And coupled with his Sharingan and skills as a former ANBU, the Uchiha was plain out scary to fight. The only upper hand that Naruto could get so far was his wings. The sensitive feathers of his two appendages detected anything coming at him from behind and the sides. His wings could also quickly flap, sending a burst of wind to blow an enemy or projectile back, or steady himself. Itachi literally ran circles around the blonde. Naruto spun this way and that, shielding himself with his wings as the Nukenin looked for an opening to strike. One revealed itself. Itachi jumped towards Naruto. He crossed his arms in front of his chest, the blades facing toward the blonde. Then he slashed outwards, aiming for his opponent's head. Naruto ducked and tried to palm strike the Uchiha in the sternum. Itachi turned in a full circle and moved backwards simultaneously, letting his kodachi swing wildly as a result. The blonde aborted his strike and resorted to turning in the same direction as the raven-haired man in order to avoid the deadly blades. Itachi suddenly shot forward and slammed the sole of his heel into Naruto's chest, sending him stumbling back from the force of the kick. The raven-haired man continued the offense and blurred in front of the surprised blonde, his left hand's kodachi ready to bury itself in Naruto's stomach. The blonde quickly flapped his wings, sending himself backwards even more to avoid the blade. Itachi glued himself to the ground with chakra as the gust of wind pushed him. He brought his right arm forward in a thrust. Naruto slapped his hands together in front of him, catching the blade in between his palms. The tip was safely caught in a chakra-covered area of his hand, preventing any cuts. Itachi stepped forward, bringing his other kodachi to bear. He slashed downwards at the former Jinchuriki's head. Surprisingly, his halo stopped the blade with a metallic clang. Naruto jumped and planted his feet on Itachi's chest, kicking it hard. The Uchiha reeled backwards. The blonde backflipped from the kick, his wings steadying himself as he spun in the air. As soon as his feet touched the ground, he pointed his index finger in a gun-like way at the Uchiha, using his other hand to steady it. Teppei! A thin beam of white light shot from the tip of the finger. It struck Itachi's left-handed kodachi, making it fly off into the cherry blossom tree's canopy. Itachi watched the path of his weapon as it disappeared in the leaves. Interesting. Keep your head in the battle, team! Naruto smirked as his Ryatsu flared. He exchanged his pointed finger for an open palm directed at the Uchiha. Nensho Rei! An even larger beam shot out of his palm. Itachi's Sharingan swirled, the tomo connecting into a triple-bladed figure. Amaterasu. A scorching black flame burst outwards from his crimson eyes, engulfing the beam and flying towards the blonde. Naruto gasped as the unholy fire quickly approached him. Shit! It's moving too fast, Naruto thought in panic. His skin crisped under the intense heat. Sweat poured as he pushed his hand upward in panic. Ran, Shikamaru, Neji and Lee ran through the trees that covered the park. Hibana flew over them to look for any signs of the Akatsuki or Naruto. A flash of light on top of a nearby hill drew her attention. I found them, the angelic teen told her companions as she pointed in the direction of the hill. She banked towards the hill and sped up. Sakura sat at the base of a tree, gasping for breath. She mentally berated herself for not bringing along any ninja equipment on her date. Suddenly, a large blade exploded from the bark right above her head. The pinkette instinctively rolled forward to dodge the strike. Kisame drew Samahata back, making the tree topple. Sakura turned to face her opponent. Her eyes widened at the destruction the sharkskin blade caused. The bark of the tree was not sliced cleanly. It looked more like it was shaved by a rusty razor. No more playing games, Pinky? Kisame taunted. It's time to end this. A sudden explosion rocked the ground beneath their feet. Naruto! The medic Nin shouted in worry. She immediately ran in the direction of the explosion. Kisame huffed before following swiftly after her heels. Itachi watched as the black flames slowly died down, revealing a huge scorched area instead of Naruto's side of the battlefield. He looked upwards to see the blonde hanging on a glowing rope of sort. It was attached to the glowing hands of another figure with wings. Hikari no Kei! Naruto gasped. He looked up at his angelic friend with a big grin. What took you so long? Hibana shook her head in exasperation and relief. Her Ryatsu-infused hands held onto the light whip tightly. Are you alright? I'm fine, Naruto shouted back. He glared back at the Uchiha. The raven-haired man stared back with the same impassive look. Two blurs suddenly shot by, one stealing the Uchiha's remaining kodachi from his hand. Itachi also found himself not able to move. Kagame no Jutsu, Shikamaru drawled as he let his hands fall to his sides. He walked out into the open from behind the Uchiha, nodded lightly to the airborne blonde. Ran smirked as she drove the blade of Itachi's sword into the ground. We got here just in time. Don't even try to move, Neji muttered as he put a palm to Itachi's chest, ready to put a surge of chakra in order to stop his heart if necessary. At that moment, Sakura dived into the slightly burned clearing atop the hill. Kisame followed, jumping out from the canopy of a nearby tree. Lee blurred out of nowhere in front of the still midair Kisame. Konoha Senpu! The leotard-clad shinobi shouted before sending an axe kick to the blue-skinned man's chest. Kisame flipped from the force of the kick and landed roughly on his back. Naruto! Are you alright? Sakura shouted as she stood. Her eyes scanned the ground for her teammate. A voice made her look up. I'm fine, Sakura-chan. How about you? The pinkette blinked as Naruto hovered above her, holding onto what looked to be a rope made of pure light. The rope was held by one of Naruto's supernatural companions, Hibana if she remembered correctly. Itachi grunted. I've been caught. It's all over now, Itachi team, Naruto said as he dropped from his light whip. Now tell me why you attacked me. Itachi continued to look impassive. I will tell you that as soon as you tell me what happened to the QB. The blonde smirked. Well, he's not inside me anymore, that's for sure. The Uchiha grunted again. Thank you for sharing with us that information, Naruto-kun. I hope we see each other sometime again. Naruto furrowed his brow. What are you talking about? You aren't going anywhere. I haven't gone anywhere at all, Naruto-kun, Itachi replied. I haven't moved a single muscle and yet you've told me what I needed to know. His statement served to confuse the teens surrounding him. Then the Uchiha's face suddenly seemed to melt off, revealing the face of another man's. Naruto's eyes widened. That's the guy who tried to hurt Ayam-chan. The man groaned as Shikamaru released the Kagame no Jutsu. Neji caught him as he slumped to the ground. Naruto looked at where Kisame's body should be only to find the man's large brother. Damn it! He cursed. Troublesome. Shikamaru mumbled. I've read about a jutsu that allows a shinobi to temporarily transfer his appearance and abilities to a dead body, and use the body's senses as if his own. It's not practical in combat as it takes an abnormal amount of chakra and focus to use, so much that the user must meditate to use it properly. It also sends out large chakra flares that give away their position. We need to warn Bachan and Erosenin, Naruto said. No need, Ran replied. Haku-chan probably has them coming here by now. The blonde nodded. Good. So now I'll just... He fell flat on his face, asleep before he even hit the ground. Hibana sighed as she slowly landed next to her winged friend. She bent down to check his pulse. He still isn't used to using Ryatsu in a battle situation. He has to remember that his Ryatsu reserves aren't as large as his chakra ones. He hasn't changed at all, Sakura said under her breath. She smiled lightly at his unconscious form. 2 pairs of feet walked down a dark, metallic corridor. The footsteps clacking made loud echoes run up and down the halls. The men bearing those feet carried identical looks of regality and intense seriousness. You could practically feel the tension on their breaths. Kami and Akuma strode down the corridor to a simple wooden door. The younger of the 2 lords opened the door, and both walked into the large room beyond. Angels and demons scurried all over the room. Several closely studied strange radar-like devices, while others handed paperwork over to their superiors. Some discussed battle formations on a table, while others communicated to outlying bases on their radios. The room was obviously a control center of some sort. One demon spotted the 2 lords at the doorway. Praise be to Kami-sama. Devotion be to Akuma-sama. All beings in the room stopped what they were doing and echoed the demon in unison. They bowed. You may rise, Akuma told them. The beings immediately resumed working. The 2 lords walked over to a table where several angels and demons looked over what seemed to be a model of a field. Alpha Station to the west is suffering technical failures, so we need to send an engineering team. Beta Station witnessed an assault group marching their way, but Delta Station denies this claim. They say it was a scouting group by the Darkwing spirits according to the crests on their chests. One angel said as he used a katana to point at various places on the field. There were small rectangular boxes at each point. As the 2 lords came over, he sheathed his blade and saluted. Praise be to... Enough, Hibaru, Kami interrupted. As my son, you do not need to perform such formalities. Still, as a superior you deserve proper respect, father. The angel, Hibaru, responded with a smug smirk. Akuma shook his head in exasperation. At times like these, I'm glad Ran is an only child. Shut up, Aniki. Kami glared at his brother. He turned back to his son. Just tell me the status on the fronts. The nether beings are being held back to their portal at the western and eastern fronts. Skirmishes have broken out on the northern front. Sightings on the southern front, but the nether beings' migration patterns should have most of them up north. Hibaru explained as he pointed at the places again, with his finger this time. Kami narrowed his eyes. Nether beings. Nether beings were just that, beings from the netherworld, the area of unknown origin or size that surrounded the 3 ethereal planes. Neither of the lords that ruled the planes even knew its purpose. The nether beings themselves, however, were not evil. They were just beasts, having the same amount of sentience as a goat. They had many shapes that resembled earthly animals. Their only negative attribute was their extreme hunger. Although mostly pacifist, they killed anything that blocked the way to their grazing fields. So as a result, all 3 planes have set up borderlines of sorts that keep the beasts away. Even in the eternity that the planes have existed, no unarmed angel, demon or spirit has been able to cross the borderline without being mutilated within an hour. And with the unknown purpose of the beasts, the 3 lords could not entirely wipe them out without expecting some sort of consequence. Reinforce the southern line just in case, Kami stated. Akuma just listened as his younger sibling started to give orders on how to distribute troops on both of their planes' borders. He couldn't help but feel proud. Kami was the tactician of the 2 brothers. No one could match his military genius or his ability to execute plans. Akuma was the warrior, preferring to battle on the front lines as a shock trooper. Of course, that doesn't mean Kami is a weakling. Hell, if the two went all out, Kami would probably draw out the fight to a couple millennia. And when forced to, Akuma himself could also think of plans that could match any military prodigies, mortal or not. Do we send word to Shinigami Dano to recall his Darkwings? Hibaro asked his father. They might be caught in the crossfire should a battle break out. Hi, Kami answered. Tell him we need another shipment of armor and weapons as well. He has a few millennia's worth of blacksmiths at his disposal that need to refine their skills. Right on it. Hibaro left to inform the communicators to contact a messenger. Akuma glanced at his younger brother. Ototo. Yes, Aniki? My spies in Yomi have spotted a peculiar person, the Lord of Makai said with a grimace. They confirmed it was Hantaisha Kagai. Kami frowned. His face scrunched up with anger. That bastard. I'll get him soon enough for what he did to Hibana. We'll keep lookout, Akuma told him. The two lords stared silently at nothing. They thought hard and hoped. They hoped for their newest experiment not to go awry and lose sight of his original goal. A figure sat at a ramen stand, slurping lightly at the salty broth of a miso ramen bowl. He had short-cropped ebon hair and poison-green eyes. His face was apathetic, but it had a hidden charming, handsome quality to it. His black leather jacket shined in the dim lighting with a crimson shirt under it. On his lower body, he wore crimson pants and a black stained chain was wrapped around his waist. On his back was a black scythe with a crimson serrated blade. He sighed as he sensed a couple of demons watch him from a nearby rooftop. The being, named Hantaisha Kagai, finished his dish before he turned to look straight at the surprised spies. Kagai raised an eyebrow before turning back to the scared-as-shit ramen stand owner. You know, I've always hated ramen, he told the owner. Then he smiled. The stand, the block around it, and the spirits within exploded in a fury of dark energy. Naruto awoke on a hospital bed, clad in nothing but his trench coat, his sash, and a pair of boxers. I have a feeling things are going to get ridiculously complicated over the next few days. Kagai walked over to two Darkwing spirits lying on the ground, making sure to step extra hard on their spiritual armor once he got there. Weak, the teen said as he spat on the spirits' faces. Even for the so-called elite. What kind of system is Shinigami running these days? The body suddenly began to dissolve. As an already dead being, spirits could not die. They could only disappear into oblivion, never to be seen or heard again through any known means. The black-haired boy reattached his scythe to his back and looked out in front of him. There it was. The Infinity Codex, the book that documented the past, present, future, and all that occurred and existed within those times. Some say it was written by the very first all-powerful being that created the three lords of the plains and the deities that shaped the mortal world. But however it was written, the matter of the fact was that should it fall into the wrong hands, the realms could be forever trapped in an age of chaos. It was guarded deep within the recesses of Shinigami's palace, guarded by elite Darkwing spirits. The Darkwing spirits were the standing army of Yomi. They possessed superior technology and weapons than their angel or demon counterparts. This is due to their need for protection against the nether beings, which the dead naturally did not have, seeing as they have no energy coils of any sort. The Darkwings often wore full body armor that befit a samurai but had technology that would make any non-spiritual technician drool. Many parts had shock-absorbing materials, and could withstand a Tepu ray without any visible effect. Their weapons were more like beams of pure artificial energy attached to a metallic rod. I might need one of these, Kagai said as he took one of the spirit's beam swords and attached it to his belt. He walked up to the book. This thing is twice my fricking size, the scythe-toting teen shouted as he looked up at the really big tome. It had a pure white cover with golden edges. And as he said, the book was literally twice his height and thicker than the pure metal walls that made the room it was contained in. The Infinity Codex seemed to radiate its own aura that could intimidate any lesser being into submission. Kagai grumbled as he put his hand on the colossal cover. Well, this is it. He gave a hard heave and the book opened, its infinite pages instantly flipping to where the book sensed its reader wanted to go. It stopped. Kagai grinned as he read the passage that contained what he wanted. Perfect. A company of dark-winged spirits slammed down the door to the Infinity Codex chamber. The vault-like door fell to the floor with a clang. The room was empty save for pieces of armor, a few beamed swords, the Infinity Codex on its pedestal, and a slight burn on the ground. The armored spirits rushed into the room, securing the perimeter of the walls and keeping an eye at the Codex at all times. One didn't. He walked calmly to the burn on the ground and studied it. His eyes widened. Well? A voice asked from outside the room. What has Experiment 1 done to the Codex? The spirit looked directly at the voice. A general's badge on his chest shined brightly. He must have learned a seal from the Infinity Codex and used it. Whatever the seal was, it required large amounts of both Ryatsu and Yuki. These burn marks are still fresh with them. The voice hummed. Contact Kamidano and Akumadano at once. Perhaps they know which seal was used and one's reason to do so. The Darkwing General nodded. His cerulean eyes scanned the burn mark, trying to see if the seal outline was still visible. His lips tightened into a thin line. His spiky blonde hair waved as his head turned back to the voice. Actually, I think I know which seal he used. Then tell me. General Minato. The voice demanded. By the looks of it, this is a teleportation seal, possibly a Tenshi/Onijutsu, Kukudo Jutafuin, angelic/demonic arts, realm jump seal. The former Hokage explained. Should we send troops to intercept him, Shinigami-sama? The Emperor of Yomi, decked in ethereal white and black robes, put a hand to his chin. No Experiment 2 should be able to handle him. If what Kamidano has told me is true, then 2 is on the mortal realm, is that correct? Minato narrowed his eyes in slight confusion. But Shinigami-sama, how do you know 1 transported to the mortal realm? For all we know, he could have just went Shinkai or Makai. Trust me, Captain. 1 has his reasons to visit the mortal world. Shinigami told him. The Lord began to walk back to his personal chambers in order to get some rest. Managing a whole realm filled with trillions of souls would cause some major stress pains. Tracking a rogue being who could possibly be a match for any of the 3 lords causes even bigger ones. Get me Hiruzen. Minato told one of the spirits near the door. Yes, sir. The spirit saluted before he ran out of the chamber to search for the other of Shinigami's generals. Ran awoke. She sat up on the bed that she shared with her angelic cousin. The navy blue-haired teen looked around with half-lidded eyes. Hibana snored lightly as she slept next to her, clad only in one of Naruto's smaller shirts. Ran herself was wearing one as well. She also spotted Haku on Naruto's couch, sleeping soundly, with said blonde at the floor next to it. His head was on a small pillow while the rest of his body was uncomfortably sprawled on the hard wooden floor. The demonic girl got off the bed and immediately walked to the bathroom, stopping only to get her clothes off a dresser near the bathroom door. She came out a few minutes later, fully dressed and awake. Ran quietly tiptoed to the apartment's exit and pulled the door open. She slowly slid out and closed the door behind her. As soon as the door closed, she immediately jumped over the railing down to the street 4 stories below. Ran landed soundlessly and began to stroll in the cool morning air of autumn in Konoha. She studied the decorations everywhere. One was a particularly large and decorated sign that said, 15 years ago, the demon died. 3 years ago, it died again. Ran was not stupid. She knew of Naruto's past and his memories, many of which he told her personally. The very thought that these people would celebrate at a hero's death sickened her. PSH. Humans. At least some of them turned out to be decent. Ran mentally ranted. The sound of a door opening caught her attention. She saw a man around her age walk out of a grocery store, a plastic bag of food items in hand. He had black pineapple-styled hair, an apathetic visage, and the standard Konoha Chunin uniform. Shikamaru glanced at the only other person on the street. It was Naruto's demonic companion. Ran waved at him with a small smile. The Nara ignored it, and walked down in the same direction she was going. The green-eyed teen huffed. She caught up to him and tapped his shoulder. You're Naruto's friend, right? Ran asked. Shikamaru grunted in response. She frowned. You should at least say hi when someone waves at you. It's too troublesome, he simply answered. Well, fine then. The demoness huffed again. The two continued walking down the street. The sun peeked over the horizon, illuminating the morning twilight in a glow. Why are you following me? Shikamaru asked, not turning to look at her. I've got nothing else better to do, Ran replied. Besides, I love morning walks. The air here in the mortal realm is way better than Makai's. Moisture is something we kind of lack down there. The lazy Chunin suddenly stopped, causing the other team to pause as well. Shikamaru turned to the girl with a small glare. Look, Ran-san, I do not trust you. Not in the slightest. Her eyebrows rose in surprise at the sudden comment. And why is that? Let's just say Konoha doesn't have a good history with demons, he answered, putting slight emphasis on his last word. Even though Naruto trusts your little facade, I am sure you have no other intention but to harm him. I will not allow that. And I thought a friend of Naruto-chan's would be less idiotic than that. She hissed at him. Do you not know his past burdens? A person is not responsible for what they are born as. Their actions and words are not affected at all by their birthright. I am no different. True, but he was merely a demon's container, Shikamaru countered. You, on the other hand, are of the same kin as the monster that almost destroyed this village 15 years ago. So does that mean all angels are purely innocent and good then? Ran said sarcastically. She chuckled. Does that mean all humans are in the middle, the balance of good and evil? In general, yes, Shikamaru said confidently. All humans are made to choose, with their own freedom. We possess the ability to be as pure as an angel, or as defiled as a demon. However, every single demon ever encountered by humanity in the course of history has been malevolent, and has caused many to suffer. Rant's eyes immediately softened. So, her voice became quiet. Shikamaru could barely hear it. Does that mean we're slaves to the example that certain individuals make? Does that mean we have no choice but be evil? The tactician thought for a moment. He looked up at her. Yes. Doors began to unlock as civilians piled onto the streets to do their errands and set up shops. As Konoha's citizens awakened, many either did not notice or did not care to why a shinobi stood motionless in the middle of the street, with a red hand-shaped mark on his cheek. Gaara tried to open his eyes, but had a lot of trouble doing so. With the little slit he managed to open, he saw a big black thing with red blobs on it in front of him. He registered his body to be on top of a hard object that was moving. Wind lashed at his face, indicating he was moving at a fast speed. The Jinchuriki groaned as his memory re-registered itself. Memories from his battle with two Akatsuki members last night resurfaced. I've been captured. At least the village is safe, the red-haired Kazekage thought. He silently chuckled. If Naruto was still alive, he'd mock me about this until I died. I think the brat is conscious, a gruff voice said. He made a noise. I'm on it, yeah? Another smoother one answered. Gaara felt a chop to the back of his neck and the world faded to black. Naruto! No eating while on the job. I am shouted as she bopped the blonde on the head with a ladle. Srmfi! Naruto grumbled, his mouth still full of noodles. He quickly swallowed. I'll get back to work. Ayam smiled in exasperation as she watched him continue to stir the boiling noodles. Oh hey, Ayam-san! A deep voice called as its owner entered the stand. My usual before-mission meal, please. Sure thing, Chuji-san. Ayam cheerfully replied to the big-boned Akimichi. She poured broth into an extra-large bowl specifically made for Akimikis and a certain Uzumaki. The ramen girl then went over to her blonde employee and told him Chuji's preferred toppings. And no repeats with yesterday this time. The brunette winked playfully. Hi. Naruto replied, rolling his eyes. He strained the water in the pot he was boiling and transferred all of the noodles into the bowl. He put in the toppings and set it in front of the armored shinobi. So, Naruto said as he watched his portly friend chow down. How's it been since I was dead, Chuji? It's been good. he replied as he finished slurping down the broth. Things haven't really changed for me. I go on missions, train, and then eat here or at Asuma-sensei's favorite barbecue restaurant. That should be everyone's schedules. The blonde joked. What could be better than missions, training and eating here at Ichiraku's? Yeah. The armored teen chuckled. I actually think the food here has gotten even better since Tuchi-san went away. Naruto furrowed his brow. You're making sound like he's been gone for a long time. But he has been gone for a long time. Now it was Chuji's turn to frow. Ayam-chan told me he's only at the ramen competitions in Demon Country for a few weeks. The angel/demon narrowed his eyes in suspicion. The sound of metal clanging made him turn around. Ayam had dropped her ladle. Her head was bowed and her shoulders were sagging. I think I better go. Chuji mumbled as he inconspicuously slid out of his seat and hurried out of the stand. Naruto walked over to his brunette friend and reached out to touch her shoulder. Ayam suddenly turned and grabbed it. Tears flowed freely from her eyes. Ayam-chan? Naruto asked, his eyes demanding to know where Tuchi had went. Where is Tuchi-Ajisen? Ayam sniffed. He's gone. Gone where? The blonde covered the hand that held his hand with his other one. I'll tell you. The brunette answered. It was just a few days since you died. The villagers had begun partying and a few drunkards came to the stand. They attacked us with rusty kunai and sake bottles. She gasped as tears began to flow again. They shouted, "Killed the demon lovers," over and over again. They tried to do stuff to me but Tusen fought them off. He got hurt badly. The medics at the hospital said his lungs were pierced by his broken ribs, and they couldn't fix it without killing him. But Bachan could heal anything, Naruto said. Why couldn't she? Medical jutsu have no effect on civilians. Most of them use the patient's own chakra system to power the healing. That is the reason medic nin require only precise chakra control and not large chakra reserves. Ayam interrupted. The only way to extract the ribs was to send him to the hospital in the capital city. They had equipment there that could save him from death. However, he's been in a coma since. The ramen girl broke into sobs. I've made that lie about the ramen competitions over 2 years ago. It was mostly to encourage myself that he was safe and not at the brink of dying. The blonde slowly wrapped his arms around Ayam, holding her tightly. He noted how frail his former older sister figure was at the moment. It's strange, isn't it? Naruto mumbled. What is? Ayam asked as she settled into the embrace, putting her head on his shoulder. The blonde sighed. The ramen girl felt his warm breath tickle her neck. You do not feel pain when you die, Naruto whispered. His voice had a wise tone to it, as if he spoke from first-hand experience, which he did. But your loved ones do. Ayam smiled as she pulled her head back in order to look at his face. You've grown up, Naruto, she stated. The blonde grinned. Well, I have to sometime, right? The brunette's smile fell as her face took on a more serious expression. Naruto blinked in confusion. What's wrong now, MPH? Ayam had leaned forward. Hibana walked down the street, enjoying the view of the village. The large village had many interesting things that were new to the young angel. Also, Konoha was warmer than Shinkai usually was in autumn. It was a pleasant change to the usual near-frozen air of Shinkai. Where is he? The angelic teen asked. Haku had asked to know where an ideal weapons store was and had Hibana go ask Naruto for any ideas. She spotted the ramen stand that said Blonde now worked in. Maybe he's there. The kimono-wearing girl walked up to the stand's flaps and moved one aside in order to peek at the stand's interior. Her eyes widened. Oh my Tusan! Hibana whispered in shock as she stumbled back a few steps. She covered her mouth in shock as her eyes began to water. Kagai walked through dense woodland, taking note of all the wildlife around him. Songbirds chirped jovially, a pair of wolves ran by, a squirrel chewed happily on a nut. The stark contrast to the industrialized Yomi was appealing to the black-haired boy. Where are you, Hibanaheim? He mumbled mostly to himself. Where are you in Ranheim? I miss you. There was a flash of black light and a dark figure soared through the canopy. The animals in the forest dropped dead while the trees wilted as it passed by. It seemed death was the figure's personal escort. Chapter end. So how was the story? I hope you like it. Share this story with your friends and comment down if you want more stories like this. I will meet you in the next video. Sayonara.